The fluorescent lights in Cedars-Sinai Medical Center hummed their usual sterile symphony as Dr. Abraham Lieberman walked down the corridor toward room 447, carrying a manila folder that felt heavier than it should. Inside that folder was a diagnosis that would change everything. It was April 1984, and the man waiting in that room was Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer who ever lived. What Dr. Lieberman didn't know was that the next 10 minutes would teach him more about courage than his entire medical career had prepared him for. Ali sat on the examination table, his hands resting on his knees. Those hands, the same hands that had moved faster than cameras could capture, that had defeated Sonny Liston and George Foreman, now trembled slightly even when he tried to keep them still. He was only 42 years old, but his body was telling a different story. The slurred speech, the shuffling walk, the tremors that came and went like uninvited guests. Everyone around Ali had been pretending not to notice, but Ali noticed everything. Dr. Lieberman had been a neurologist for 23 years. He'd delivered difficult diagnoses hundreds of times, maybe thousands. Brain tumors, ALS, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. He'd learned to maintain professional distance, to deliver the news with clinical precision and appropriate empathy. But walking into Muhammad Ali's hospital room felt different. This wasn't just another patient. This was an icon, a symbol of strength and defiance, who had taken on governments and won. How do you tell a man like that his own body is betraying him? "Mr. Ali," Dr. Lieberman said, pulling up a chair. His voice was steady, practiced. "We've completed all the tests. The neurological examinations, the brain scans, the blood work. I need to talk to you about what we found." Ali looked at him with those eyes that had stared down opponents across 100 boxing rings. There was no fear in them, just patient attention. "Go ahead, Doc. I can take it. Been hit by harder things than words." Dr. Lieberman opened the folder, though he didn't really need to look at it. He'd memorized every detail, reviewed every scan a dozen times, hoping he'd missed something, hoping there was an error. There wasn't. "Mr. Ali, you have Parkinson's disease. It's a degenerative neurological condition that affects movement, speech, and coordination. The tremors you've been experiencing, the difficulty with balance, the changes in your speech, they're all symptoms of the disease." The room was silent, except for the distant sound of hospital intercoms and the beeping of machines in other rooms. Ali nodded slowly, processing the information like he'd processed the weaknesses of every opponent he'd ever faced. "Okay. What's the treatment? What do we do?" This was the part Dr. Lieberman had been dreading. "Mr. Ali, there's no cure. We can manage the symptoms with medication, slow the progression somewhat, but Parkinson's is progressive. It gets worse over time. Your motor functions will continue to deteriorate. The tremors will increase. Your mobility will become more limited. Speech will become more difficult." Ali was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that every patient asks, the question that never gets easier to answer. "How long do I have, Doc? Give it to me straight." Dr. Lieberman had rehearsed this moment, prepared different ways to frame it, softer language, more hopeful statistics. But looking at Muhammad Ali, at that face that had never backed down from truth, he knew there was only one way to say it. "Based on the severity of your symptoms and the rate of progression we're seeing, I'd estimate you have about 6 months before the disease significantly impacts your quality of life. Maybe a year before you'll need full-time assistance." The Parkinson's combined with the damage from years of boxing, the repeated head trauma, it's accelerated the process. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ali. I wish I had better news." 6 months. The words hung in the air like a referee's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 months before the greatest fighter in history would be unable to fight anymore. 6 months before his body became a prison. 6 months before Muhammad Ali, who had floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee, would be unable to do either. But what happened next, what Ali said in response to that devastating diagnosis, didn't just surprise Dr. Lieberman, it stopped him completely. It stopped the nurse who had quietly entered to check vitals. It eventually stopped everyone in that hospital who heard the story, because Muhammad Ali's reply to death itself was so unexpected, so perfectly Ali, that it reminded everyone what true courage actually looks like. Ali smiled, not a sad smile, not a brave smile hiding fear, but a genuine warm smile that lit up his face despite the tremors. Then he leaned forward, looked Dr. Lieberman straight in the eyes, and said 7 words that would echo through that hospital and beyond. "Doc, how long do you have left?" Dr. Lieberman blinked, completely thrown off balance. "Excuse me." Ailey's smile widened. "How long do you have, Doc? You gave me 6 months. So what's your number? 10 years? 20? 30 if you're lucky? You got a guarantee I don't know about." The doctor opened his mouth to respond, but Ali wasn't finished. His voice, though slowed by the disease, carried that familiar rhythmic quality that had made him famous. "See, Doc, here's what I learned in the ring. Every fight you walk in knowing you might not walk out. Every punch you take, every round you fight, you're using up time. We're all on a countdown, Doc. You, me, everyone in this hospital. The only difference is you just told me my number, but you don't know yours." The Dr. Lieberman sat back in his chair, his carefully prepared follow-up conversation completely derailed. In 23 years of practice, no patient had ever responded to a terminal diagnosis by questioning the doctor's own mortality. Ali continued, his trembling hands now gesturing as he spoke, the movements giving emphasis to his words. "I've been dying since the day I was born. Same as you. We all have. I just got a clearer countdown now. But you know what? That's a gift, Doc. Most people don't know. They walk around thinking they got forever, putting off the things that matter, waiting for the perfect time to tell people they love them, waiting to make peace with their enemies, waiting to actually live." The nurse standing by the door, a woman named Maria Rodriguez, who'd been working in oncology for 15 years, and thought she'd heard every possible reaction to bad news, found tears running down her face. She wasn't supposed to cry in front of patients. It was unprofessional, but she couldn't help it. 6 months, Ali said, testing the words. "You know how much living a man can do in 6 months if he knows that's all he's got. You know how many people I can help, how many kids I can inspire, how many hearts I can touch. 6 months of purpose is worth more than 60 years of just existing." Dr. Lieberman's professional composure, built over decades of maintaining emotional distance, cracked completely, his eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Ali, most patients, when they hear this kind of news, they're angry, or depressed, or in denial. I've never seen anyone respond like this." Ali reached out with his trembling hand and placed it on the doctor's shoulder. The gesture was gentle, despite the tremors. "Doc, I'm not most patients. I spent my whole life refusing to be what people expected. You think I'm gonna start now? You think Muhammad Ali is going down scared?" And Ali did something that would become legendary in that hospital, a story told and retold by every staff member who witnessed it or heard about it. He stood up from the examination table, his legs unsteady, and he started shadowboxing. Slow motion, careful, his trembling fists moving through the air in combinations that had once been too fast for the human eye to follow. Left jab, right cross, left hook. The movements were a shadow of what they'd been, but the spirit behind them was pure, undiluted. "Ali, see this, Doc? This is me fighting, always fighting. Not fighting the Parkinsons, that's a fight I'm gonna lose. We both know that. But I'm fighting to make every day count. Fighting to show people that your value isn't in how strong your body is, it's in how strong your spirit is. Fighting to prove that 6 months of living with purpose beats 60 years of hiding from your own mortality." Dr. Lieberman stood up, abandoning all professional protocol, and embraced his patient. It wasn't something they taught in medical school. It wasn't in any manual for delivering bad news, but in that moment, the doctor was the one being healed by his patient. The nurse, Maria, stepped forward. "Mr. Ali, can I tell you something? My father has Parkinson's. He was diagnosed 2 years ago, and he's been in a depression ever since. Won't leave the house, won't see his grandkids, just sits in his chair waiting to die. When I tell him about this conversation, about what you just said, it's gonna change his life." Ali turned to her, his face serious now. "You tell your father that Muhammad Ali says it's not about how you fall, it's about what you do while you're falling. Tell him there's still fights to fight, still people to love, still reasons to get out of that chair. Tell him 6 months of living beats 6 years of dying slow." Word spread through the hospital faster than any official communication could have moved it. Doctors between patients, nurses on break, technicians in the hallways, everyone was talking about what Muhammad Ali had said to Dr. Lieberman. Within an hour, people were finding excuses to walk past room 447, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man who'd just been told he had 6 months and responded by shadowboxing. A young resident named Dr. Patricia Chen, who'd been working 36-hour shifts and questioning whether she'd made the right career choice, heard the story from a colleague. She found herself standing outside Ali's room, gathering courage. Finally, she knocked. "Come in," Ali's voice called out. Dr. Chen entered, nervous. "Mr. Ali, I'm sorry to bother you. I heard what you said to Dr. Lieberman about making 6 months count more than 60 years of existing. I needed to hear that today. I've been so focused on getting through my residency, on not making mistakes, on surviving, that I forgot why I became a doctor in the first place." Ali gestured for her to sit. "Why did you become a doctor?" "To help people, to make a difference. But somewhere in the exhaustion and the stress and the fear of failure, I lost that." "Your diagnosis is terrible, Mr. Ali, and I'm so sorry you're going through this. But the way you're facing it, with such courage and purpose, it reminded me that every day is precious, every patient is precious, every moment is a chance to actually live instead of just survive." Ali nodded slowly. "That's good, Doc. That's real good. Now you understand something that took me years to learn. I used to think being the greatest meant winning every fight, having the fastest hands, the biggest mouth, the most titles. But you know what really makes you great? How you handle the fights you can't win, how you face the opponent you can't beat. That's when your true character shows." The young doctor left that room a different person than when she entered it. Years later, she would become one of the country's leading palliative care specialists, dedicating her career to helping terminal patients find meaning and dignity in their final months. She always credited that 10-minute conversation with Muhammad Ali as the moment she understood her true calling. But Ali wasn't finished yet. That evening, he asked Dr. Lieberman to arrange something unusual. He wanted to speak to all the terminal patients in the hospital who were well enough to gather. The hospital administration initially resisted, citing protocols and patient privacy and liability concerns. But Dr. Lieberman, still reeling from his own conversation with Ali, advocated for it. By 8 p.m. they'd arranged for Ali to speak in the hospital's small chapel, and word had spread to patients throughout the building. 23 people gathered there, cancer patients wearing scarves over bald heads, heart failure patients trailing oxygen tanks, ALS patients in wheelchairs, a teenage girl with cystic fibrosis, an elderly man with end-stage kidney disease. All of them had been given variations of the same news Ali had received. "Your time is limited. There's nothing more we can do. Go home and get your affairs in order." Ali stood at the front of that chapel, his hands trembling but his voice clear. "They tell you 6 months, they tell you a year, they tell you you're dying, and you are. But so is everybody else. The only difference is you know it, and that knowing, that's power, if you use it right." For 45 minutes, Muhammad Ali, the man who'd just been told he had 6 months to live, taught those terminal patients how to live more fully in their remaining time than most people live in a lifetime. He talked about gratitude for every day. He talked about forgiveness, about making peace with old enemies and old mistakes. He talked about legacy, about what you leave behind in people's hearts. He talked about faith, about believing that this life, however long or short, is just one chapter in a bigger story. "You want to know my secret?" Ali asked them. "I stopped asking why me. A long time ago. Why did I get stripped of my title? Why did I lose those years in my prime? Why did I get Parkinson's? Wrong question. The right question is, what now? What am I going to do with the time I have, whether it's 6 months or 6 years or 60 years?" A middle-aged woman with stage 4 breast cancer raised her hand. "Mr. Ali, I'm so angry. I'm angry at God, angry at the universe, angry at my body for betraying me. How do you let go of that anger?" Ali smiled gently. "Who says I let go of it? I'm angry too. I'm angry I can't move like I used to, can't talk like I used to, can't be the man I was. But you know what I learned in the ring? You can't fight angry. Anger makes you sloppy, makes you stupid, makes you lose. You got to take that anger and turn it into something else. Turn it into purpose. Turn it into love for the people still here. Turn it into determination to make every day count." The teenage girl with cystic fibrosis, Her name was Emma, asked quietly, "What if you never got to do the things you wanted? What if you're dying before you really lived?" This question made Ali pause. He walked over to Emma, moving carefully with his unsteady gait, and knelt down beside her wheelchair, so they were eye to eye. "How old are you, Emma?" 17. 17 years old, and asking the deepest question there is. "Listen to me, Emma. Living isn't about how many years you get or how many things you do. I've met people who lived to be 90 and never really lived at all. And I've known people who only got a handful of years, but they lived more fully, more courageously, more lovingly than anyone else. You want to know if you really lived? Ask yourself, did you love people? Did you let people love you? Did you forgive? Did you create something beautiful, even if it was just a moment of joy for someone else? Did you face your fear with courage? That's living, Emma. That's what counts." Emma started crying, and her mother, sitting beside her, pulled her close. But these weren't just tears of sadness, they were tears of release, of understanding, of a burden being lifted. When Ali finally left that chapel, every single person there had been transformed, not cured. Their diagnoses hadn't changed, but transformed in how they viewed their remaining time. They'd walked in seeing themselves as victims of death. They walked out seeing themselves as warriors in their final fight. Dr. Lieberman, who'd observed the entire session, approached Ali in the hallway afterward. "Mr. Ali, what you did in there, that wasn't a motivational speech. That was medicine, real medicine. More powerful than anything I can prescribe." Ali shook his head slowly. "Nah, doc, that wasn't medicine. That was just truth. Everybody dies. Not everybody lives. I'm just trying to make sure I do both right." The story of Muhammad Ali's response to his diagnosis spread far beyond that hospital. Newspapers picked it up, television news covered it, and Ali's famous question, "How long do you have left?" became a rallying cry for people facing their own mortality. But the most powerful impact was on the people who were there that day, who witnessed Muhammad Ali transform a death sentence into a celebration of life. Dr. Abraham Lieberman would later write in his memoir, "In 23 years of practice, I delivered thousands of terminal diagnoses. I thought I was teaching patients how to die with dignity. Then I met Muhammad Ali, and he taught me something far more important, how to live with purpose, even when you're dying. Especially when you're dying." Maria Rodriguez, the nurse, brought her father to meet Ali 2 weeks later. Her father, who'd been sitting in a chair waiting to die for 2 years, heard Ali's story directly from the champion himself. 3 months later, he was volunteering at a community center, teaching kids to box, making every day count just like Ali had said. The young resident, Dr. Patricia Chen, kept a note card on her desk for the rest of her career, with Ali's words, "6 months of living with purpose beats 60 years of just existing." As for Muhammad Ali himself, he lived not 6 months, but 32 more years after that diagnosis. 32 years of advocacy, inspiration, humanitarian work, and teaching the world that strength isn't about physical power. It's about spiritual courage. The Parkinsons took his speed, his grace, his ability to speak clearly, but it never touched what made him the greatest, his refusal to let anything, even a terminal diagnosis, define his spirit or limit his purpose. On June 3, 2016, when Muhammad Ali finally passed away, the world mourned the loss of a legend. But those who'd been in that hospital room, that chapel, who'd heard his response to Dr. Lieberman's diagnosis, they didn't just mourn, they celebrated. Because Ali had proven, in the most definitive way possible, that it's not about how long you live, it's about how fully you live in whatever time you're given. The last person to visit Ali before he died was Dr. Lieberman, now retired. Ali could barely speak by then, the Parkinsons having progressed as predicted, but when Dr. Lieberman took his hand and thanked him for teaching him the true meaning of courage, Ali managed to smile and whisper one final truth. "Doc, still don't know your number, do you?" And in that moment, Dr. Lieberman realized that Muhammad Ali had given him the greatest gift a dying patient can give their doctor. The reminder that we're all terminal, we're all on borrowed time, and the only question that matters is what we do with that time while we have it. So ask yourself, how long do you have left? And more importantly, what are you going to do with it? Because Muhammad Ali taught us that 6 months of purpose, 6 months of living fully, 6 months of loving deeply, and fighting courageously for what matters. That's worth more than a lifetime of merely existing. The greatest never stopped teaching us, even from a hospital bed, even facing death, even when his body was failing. He showed us that true strength isn't in the absence of fear, or weakness, or mortality. True strength is facing all of that and choosing to live anyway, to love anyway, to fight for meaning and purpose anyway. That's what made him the greatest. Not the championships, not the victories. The way he faced his final opponent with the same courage, grace, and defiant joy he brought to every fight in his life. How long do you have left? None of us know. So what are you going to do with today?